I didn't bring some things out of those 30 years, shame on me. I love saying it this way. It's a discipline, and discipline is continuing to do the next right thing.
Maybe now we can transition from this because you brought these same principles in some way, shape, or form, I would imagine, obviously into your fatherhood. But then, as your playing career came to an end, you were invited to coach your son's team. Is that correct? Am I getting the story right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and from this, I'm wondering if you could just share that story. How did this come about, and how did you approach it, and what came from that?
Yeah, well, I finished my career. Actually, my career was ended when I finished out playing with the Giants in San Francisco. I had a number of concussions, and they wouldn't clear me to play anymore. So at
Mm.
36, almost 37,
Wow.
and I had my best year of my career at 36, and offensively at least, and I'd won a Gold Glove. I mean, it was a great season, and there
Wow.
was no reason that I thought my
Wow.
career should end. But the neurosurgeons and neurologists saw that there were probably too many bumps to keep doing it, and so yeah, that was a sudden halt in the trajectory of where I thought my career was going. And I didn't really know. And I think most guys do the same thing. I was fortunate enough that I did finish my degree from the University of Michigan. So I was very proud that I was able to do that during the off seasons of pro ball. But I also didn't have a clear plan of what was next, like most guys. And it's one of those things that you need to probably be all in and not necessarily have that exit strategy all lined up.
Mm.
But we all know the inevitable is that you can't play the game forever, and a 13-year major league career is way beyond the average. So in the back of my mind, I knew I was ready to do whatever I needed to do. So as I was kind of trying to figure most of that out, our fourth son, Jacob, was around 10 at the time, and they had a coach that left town, and they needed a coach, and so they approached me. And at that point, I got to be honest with you. I'd seen enough. My two of my kids were competitive hockey players, as you guys up north can appreciate, and that's a crazy sport. And what I witnessed was some unbelievably weird action from parents in hockey, in soccer, and even in baseball. The games I was able to catch, it looked like there was this radical shift somehow, and it looked radically different than what I remember it being. So when the parents approached me, I said, let me think about this, let me pray about it, let me talk with Kristen and with Jake, and let me get back to you with kind of what I think it should look like, and you guys might not be interested. So I was doing a little bit of work with ESPN. I was flying back from the East Coast, and I started typing. And next thing I know, I got 5 pages single spaced. And I'm thinking, dang, this is a lot of stuff. I'm not sure people are ready for this. But the next night, we had this group of parents over, and I read them what became known as the Matheny Manifesto, which I did not name it that, just for the record. That was one of the assistant coaches put that online under that title, almost tongue in cheek, and it stuck. Still not happy about it that the book was named that. But anyway, I get in front of this group of parents, and I'm starting to read this, and I'm thinking, man, this sounded way better on the airplane than it sounds me saying it right now. And it was awkward. There was an awkward feel in the room, but I was just honest. And it was all coming down to, this is not about us as parents. This is 100% about the kids. And the sooner we can grasp that, and the sooner we can understand how we define success, is not necessarily the college scholarship. It's not necessarily if they make it to the major leagues or the highest level. What it's about is, let's use this to teach them a passion for the game, to teach them teamwork, and then a list of other character qualities that I believe come natural with a commitment to any sport. And those are going to be the definers for us. Those are going to be the metrics for us of whether or not this is a successful venture. And I look around the room, and nobody walked out, and ended up being just a phenomenal experience. And I'm going to tell everyone, though, I hedged the bet. I went and chose parents that just happened to have kids that age, but parents I thought that would buy into this. And it was a fantastic experience. Still hearing from these boys. I've been asked to perform the weddings of four of them. And
Mhm.
what a great, and almost all of them asked me to write something into their college entrance exams and just to give some references for jobs. And I mean, that's the big win. It's the long term play of jumping in and maybe being one of those mentors for those boys that, I was a coach, and that's a great title. Dad is an incredible title. But what an honor to be optional mentor and to continue to invest long down the road, long past any of their playing careers. Very, very special.
Yeah. Love the story. Really, the insight behind it. There's elements that we could explore, especially around that difficult transition out of your career, which is a whole thing that fathers, I think, also experience when they have to make transitions or changes. That can be hard, and there's a whole dynamic of that, especially for I'd say professional athletes, but lessons that can be learned. Not going to go there, but I don't want to miss that that's important, and it sounds like because you were intentional and had some preparation, it helped you navigate a very difficult and I would say unwanted transition at that point. So I guess where I'm going with this is the what was coming up as you were sharing that last part was you were coaching your son, and many dads may find themselves in similar situations and may not necessarily know how to navigate that. Maybe you experienced some of those. How do I navigate that? Can you talk to the idea of how do you coach, collectively while also still having your son maybe as part of the team? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges for a coach is to not continue to stay hyper focused on your own child, better or worse. And we've seen it both sides. The dad that just can't stop praising, or the dad that's just too hard, one or the other. I think it's very important to have multiple dads on that bench. I always encourage a dad. One of the first things he needs to do is find a couple other like-minded dads. Once you define what success looks like, then you don't necessarily need to find the one with the most experience. You want to find the one that has the most alignment with you and how you see this being successful. And I was very fortunate. I had three other dads that fell into that category, and also had some baseball experiences. So we were able to teach the game, but they were all on board that we're gonna dive in, and then it's not just being about character development, but making sure we're watching each other's back. There was a point, the one kid on my team, on that 10-year-old team, and he's given me the freedom to talk about this. The one that I had probably the most issues with as far as throwing equipment or pouting or just not being able to control his emotions was my own son. And he just is the nicest, the easiest going kid I've ever seen, but absolutely lost his mind when he walked onto a baseball field and when he failed. And we would talk through all the character traits, and all eyes were all over me whenever he'd go back and lose his mind and chuck his helmet. And so I bench him. And it got to the point, though, one of the other dads was very wise. And he said, I think what do you think about me being the one to take away his playing time, being not his father, and then made sure that I reciprocated with his son, who didn't necessarily need much attention. But it's very important to have that other dad to be able to step in, because it is so hard, because we care so much about our kids. And I made sure that the majority of the parents know that I realize that some of the craziness that comes with youth sports, I would say, is mostly rooted in crazy love for their kids, and just trying to help them have a different perspective, and maybe the perspective of that little young athlete, the perspective of the pressure that comes from all of this excitement and so much being put on their young shoulders that are driving them away from any sport, when they could probably go sit in front of a monitor and play a game that nobody's going to yell at them about how to do it. And I think as an ambassador of any sport, it's our responsibility to let people know, like, hey, this can be an and proposition. We can take them out and we can teach them a game, and we can help them grow in these other ways. And as parents, you can love them like crazy, give them everything they can, and while you give them over to us as coaches, let us do our job and let them go play the game, and let's together try and figure out how to build up a love for the game, but not miss all the important lessons that hopefully are being reinforced at home and at school, but use the platform of sports as it should be. Dr. Billy Graham said that a coach will influence more people in 1 year than the average person will in a lifetime. And I believe that's so true. So don't lose that opportunity, that small window while you can be a coach, to hopefully lock arms with parents and with teachers and with other influencers that are adults to help grow these young men, and use sports to do it.
Mhm. Do you want to hop in, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, there's so many things, but I'll go at this angle. You had spent your major league career basically being in a fatherhood fraternity. There was a
Hmm.
manager, there were other fathers you grew up with. How easy was it for you to transition being a father of young athletes? How did that help you set yourself up for success, transitioning being not only a coach, but a father for young athletes?
Yeah, and I'm not sure how smoothly I transitioned. I actually managed a couple of the guys that I played with. So I my first year managing the Cardinals, I was 42. So it wasn't that many years after playing. I was fortunately coaching a little bit after, as a roving catching instructor. So I had a rapport. But it was different when I went into that seat as a manager. It was all of a sudden the principal's office, and there was this little bit of a chasm between. But I simulate a lot of things with fatherhood, kind of how I view my faith, but certainly that employer employee relationship, and I want to make sure that I'm creating an atmosphere for our guys to thrive on the baseball field, just like I'm trying to do at home. I'm creating a space where this isn't about me as much as there's just stupid stuff inside of me that tells me otherwise. I have to continue to fight my own ego that this isn't about records. It's not about trophies and rings. It's about me bringing this group together. And I believe what a responsibility as a father too, right? You're leading and bringing this group together to protect, to provide for, and then to teach, to encourage, and to challenge all the time, every single day. And it's just like coaching. And so to me, that they go hand in hand. Um, and it was an awesome privilege that we had a number of guys that I was able to manage who just didn't have that male role model in their life at any point. And so to be able to have some of those conversations and to get some of those calls at weird hours in the night, what an honor. And I've got a couple, one in particular that continues to text me, and he calls me dad. Like, what a great gift. And he's not afraid to come to me with stuff that kind of makes me lift my eyebrows, like, whoa, okay, let's jump into this. But what a privilege. And in the meanwhile, just try to continue to show him the kind of care that you hope gets passed down the line. But I see dad and coach as kind of being synonymous.
Yeah, before Drew jumps back in, so much wonderful stuff, especially for the example of this young man or this man that still comes to you who isn't your biological father, but he still sees you as a father. So just want to encourage that too. There are guys out there who are not the biological father of a young man or a young lady, but they're still a dad in heart and presence. So I really appreciate sharing there. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think that's a really valuable point, right? The role of father can be played by others, and I had men in my life who I would say as very much father figures, role models, and many of them were coaches. And so you're right. Back to that Billy Graham quote, absolutely true. I'm wondering, as we think about transitioning into talking about your most recent book and the Dad Coach, maybe this I was thinking about the role of a coach and parents, and I think you spoke to parents in the Matheny Manifesto. But what advice would you have for parents who maybe out of their intense love for their children have maybe found themselves being a little bit overzealous, or maybe stepping across those boundaries where let the coach do that. So how can you speak to that dynamic of, if you're a parent and you really want your kids to do well, but there's sometimes this weird behavior that you're seeing. You know, you can speak to it maybe from both perspectives, as a coach dealing with it, but also as a parent. How would you say, hey, maybe it's a better way to do it?
Yeah, and Drew, that was really kind of the driving force behind the first book and both books. Is if we can maybe take the perspective of the very fortunate few that go and play at the highest level. And I've been doing some impromptu interviews with guys my whole career. Like when I became a parent and our kids started getting involved in sports, and I saw some of the craziness that was out there, it led me to go kind of do a mass interview of, hey, what how about your parents, did you see? And there's always exceptions to the rule, but an overwhelmingly large number of parents like mine that were silent sources of support. And listen, there are exceptions all the time, and I know it's hard not to get sucked into that, especially as you go and you see some of these teams with the crazy nice uniforms and all the bling that goes along with it, and the parents are acting out of their mind. If you're a new parent, you're thinking, I must have to do that. And I think what we were trying to do was to help parents know that there's a different option. And there's some guys who made it to the highest level whose parents didn't necessarily do that. And I just kind of pulled out, like, here's what my parents did, and found that that was pretty common with a lot of guys who maximized what they had. My parents would not over leverage our family for me to go play on a certain team. My parents wouldn't over leverage us financially to go pay for hitting lessons, pitching lessons, backwards running lessons, and whatever other kind of lessons are out there these days for a 7-year-old. And to let people know that that's an option, but it's not the only option. And we believe that you can go and make the most of the abilities that you have, especially at those early ages. So this particular book that I appreciate you guys promoting is called The Dad Coach. And it was really kind of a follow-up to the first, where we had people that said, yeah, we agree with what you're saying. Things are kind of jacked up in youth sports, but then you just left us with no how to move forward. And so this book is really trying to give the dad who drew the short straw, or even some of the parents, just to continue to educate them on the game and to let them know that it can be both ways. You can continue to just be a silent source of support, and your kids are still, they still got a really good chance of taking their talents as far as they can take them. And you don't necessarily need to go make the crazy investments. It's not a prerequisite for your kid to get to that next level. Now, if they continue to be the engine that pushes and are looking for more, there are economical ways to try and find that and make that happen. And at some point, they're probably going to need to be challenged to go play at some other levels if you can afford to do it as a family. But each kid's a little bit different. But when you start very, very young, there's some things that you can do, and let us give you some tools to where you can do this on a budget. You can do this and have a great experience with your child. And in the meanwhile, you're able to kind of get some of these kids started on a really good trail, and that you got your fingerprint on the development of future young men and women, and using a common passion. And hopefully, for this particular book, it's the game of baseball, a common passion of baseball to invest and to let parents know there's some different ways of going about it that might not look like what you're seeing at a lot of youth facilities these days.
Yeah, really appreciate that. As we talk specifically about your most recent book, the how, as I was reading it, there was a section where you're focusing on I think it's champions edges. Can you talk more about that, either how it came about, or even if you wanted to get into some of those edges and how much value you think that they play when it comes to being a coach of youth age 6 to 12, which is who you're targeting?
Yeah, and from really what the acrostics EDGES, it's the culmination of things that I've learned through the game that I believe are transferable. And so I'll have people in different walks of life that would like for me to come and speak. And I believe there's a responsibility after spending almost 30 years in the major league level. if I didn't bring some things out of those 30 years, shame on me. If I didn't have a little bit of a template or a little bit of an idea of here are some things that I believe that we could do that have nothing to do with talent, what are some of the things that would apply in any walk of life? And so I go through those. The E is education, that constant growth mindset. The D is the discipline, as I mentioned earlier, the commitment. I'm going to try and do the next right thing. The G is a grit, where you have that fight and that desire to watch guys, as we talked about earlier, when Ed brought up some of the perseverance, that throw your shoulders back when things get hard and figure out that, man, some of my greatest lessons ever learned in life have been through some of the hardest things I've ever gone through. And to be able to be one of those that thrives when it gets heavier. The next E is about this, I call it the E flywheel, where it's energy and enthusiasm, plus you sprinkle in a little bit of encouragement. And those three begin to self-perpetuate, and they're multipliers. General Colin Powell would call it a force multiplier, that perpetual optimism. But just convincing yourself that I'm not going to fall into the pointing the fingers and the blame game and the gossip, and I'm just not going to allow it. Those are things that we can control in our mind that make not us just better, but it makes the whole environment and our culture better. And then the last one, which I believe is the most important of all, is the choice of selflessness, which is so hard when we live in a world that, I even said it in the book, and I gave one of my mentors the credit, because it was his, that we get sucked into this idea that we the more we gain, it just turns into this. I want to make all I can for as long as I can, so I can go sit on my can, and we think that that's success, and that's a lie. There's just so much more out there, and it comes down to it being not so much about me. And once again, these are 5 things that I wanted to tell coaches, like, figure out your own 5. And what do you believe that, as these kids walk away, what do you want them to hear from you that will be a lasting imprint on their lives of how they can use the skill sets that they have? Now, we got to be honest, like, there's certain guys in certain sports, they just have so much freaky ability, right? It's just a whole nother level. And they're going to do some things and have some opportunities that most won't. But for the majority of us, but I would even say those guys, if they don't maximize those gifts, there's going to be regret on the backside. So how can whatever endeavor we jump into, how can we go about that in a way that we know that we made the most of what we had, we made the most of that opportunity, and now, all right, I got released, I just got fired again. Now what? I'm going to go put wherever my feet are. I'm going to jump into this next thing, and something great's going to come from it. And I believe having those things in mind as a coach, that you know down deep, these things will help these young men develop. And if they hold on to these, it's going to help them fight through life to be the kind of men that they were called to be.
Thank you so much for that, Ed.
Yeah, that's it's pretty hard to follow up with that. That's laying it down. That's the real deal. Uh, so when Mike, then, as a dad coach, uh, tell me a moment that you will treasure in your journey of being a dad coach. Can you give me one special moment, whether it's with the time you played, the time you spent with younger people, just something that really sticks in your mind? You gave an example earlier how this gentleman keeps on sending you messages, but what's another story that just you carry in your heart as a dad
Yeah,
coach?
as a baseball guy, I was fortunate enough in my early years. I played winter ball in the Dominican Republic, and I watched the passion that the people in the Dominican have for the game of baseball. And there's not a lot of other options for them, to be quite honest. And it's a beautiful country with a lot of economic challenges, and baseball is one of the ways out for a lot of these young men. And it's like a throwback maybe into the 40s and 50s here in the United States, where you'd see sandlot games going on everywhere. That's happening in the DR. So I always had this dream of taking a team. So that particular team that we coached, we took them over to the DR. That was our our stopping point. We knew that we would get to an age where some boys needed to go and at a higher level, some boys needed to play down. But that we thought it was wise. It was time to let them go. But our walk away was going to be a community service trip that we found some businessmen in the St. Louis area who were so generous and actually funded this trip for these boys. And we brought families and even some siblings, and we went over and there was community service in the morning. And these guys were coming off with blisters off their hands. And then we do a feeding project in the afternoon where they were giving food to kids their own age, that it was going to be their only meal of the day, that was donated through a local ministry called Go Ministries. And then at the end of every day, we'd play a double header, and these Dominican kids would typically just beat our brakes off. I mean, they're so advanced, so good. So at the end of that particular trip, watching these boys with tears talk about the life lessons that they learned. And it was this beautiful picture of everything I've been rambling on here for a while about, where all these things that you're hoping they're grasping. And then we gave each of them the floor to talk about what you just learned at the end of this trip. And you could see that it all started clicking, that even in their young minds and bodies, they have this ability to go do something good with their lives. And watching my own son get up there and seeing the emotion and seeing just the raw, I'm all right with being emotional about my feelings, and to share that with their peers. And it was just one of those huge markers, and for me, where these guys, you know what, they are ready. And now to watch where all these young men are, and to watch what they're doing as their own, as being dad coaches themselves, that I see kids that played for me, especially the younger kids. I see them, and I'm not trying to replace their fathers. Most of them have phenomenal fathers, but I got to walk alongside, and I got to make my little bit of an investment, and then watch how it influenced my own kids as well. That brought my passion and my calling in the game of baseball right alongside with my what I know my true purpose is to go help serve and to equip that next generation.
That's good stuff. Thank you for sharing that, Drew.
Mike, fantastic stuff. As advertised or expected, this has been an amazing conversation. I continue to learn, be inspired by what you're sharing. Convicted here and there in terms of, how can I improve my own fatherhood based on what Mike's saying? So I just want to say thank you for sharing your stories, sharing the wisdom with our audience, and of course through the book. So tell our listeners where they can get more.
Yeah, I think you're putting up the website. We have some people that are following up with kind of directing our followers to be able to get the book. The book will be available on Amazon. It'll be available in bookstores. Very honored that Penguin Random House decided to jump in on this project. And I have to mention the brains behind this deal, Mr. Jerry B. Jenkins, who is an incredible author. And I kind of creeped on him. I cold called him, and it's amazing how the whole story of how it came together, where he actually was a part of this. But just an incredible man, incredible writer, helped put together my thoughts in a way that I think makes sense. So I believe you're going to be able to find this just about anywhere. But if you do some searching for the Dad Coach, and we didn't really talk about it, but I do want to mention that it's going to be kind of a living project where we're going to keep adding videos. We have 75 QR codes that we're going to try and attack, and we'll actually get feedback. We'll have a site in the book that you can go to and give some questions like, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm just going to be doing some bootleg videos from my phone. I taught my 7-year-old grandson the other day in our kitchen on tile how to slide. And he figured it out. I mean, just doing things a little bit off the beaten path, but trying to do it efficiently and economically, but giving you enough tools. If you're a dad and you're a coach and you'd like to learn some more, we're going to have some resources for you. And lastly, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to with me to do this, but I mentioned at the beginning, Drew, that it's just kind of a feel good project because all of the proceeds are going to build a field down in the Dominican Republic right
Mm,
now. So we're going to inaugurate that field in late July, and so it's just we're trying to give as I want it to be the most bang for your buck book ever out there, and we just give a whole bunch from some of my friends and guys I played with and against, and even some of my own kids, and let them take as much as you can to go make the most of it.
Again, a testament to the character that you bring to all that you're doing. And I just want to say thank you for being an amazing example, a role model, and inspiring a whole generation and generations of dads to become their own dad coaches, both in their lives and for their families. So, Mike, it's truly been an honor. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
Mike,
you
it's
guys, and
been yeah,
keep doing what you're doing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we always like to say, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace.
Hmm,
Thank you so
love
much
it.
for the time.
Yeah.
All right, Drew.
Mine is going to be quick. Go get the book, follow Mike, and, you know, just engage in your fatherhood and surround yourself with others who can support you in the process.
For me, I could go on for another half an hour, but uh, it's bigger than you. And that is the positive impact, because we can always use words, but sometimes we forget to use the active, the positive impact that Mike has had in him and through him. And it's gone international. So we've met a true dad coach who's a generational dad coach, not only his own family, fathers his age, and fathers to be. That's rare. So fantastic conversation, really, really, really good, and we need to have him back, especially when that field's built. I'd love him to take some pictures and show us.
Yeah.
Definitely, that would be inspirational. Absolutely. Okay, everyone, you're watching Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. As always, we'd like to say our show is sponsored by Doveman Plus Care, because Doveman Plus Care believes care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Email us, podcast at dadcentral.ca, questions, suggestions. We'd love to hear it all. You can check out the podcast at dadcentral.ca/podcasts. And we have lots of resources to help fathers. We're not the be all end all, we're part of the family at dadcentral.ca. So, as always, like to thank you for giving the most valuable thing you have in your life, your time to spend with us. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace. Be well.